I am Abigail Kitma. I work with Tubtuba, and I'll be your moderator for this side event. We are live streaming as well on social media, and I just want to remind everyone to connect to the Wi-Fi. The link, the details are on the screen, and when you connect to the Zoom, kindly select your interpretation channel, mute yourself, and for our speakers, when you speak, kindly speak slowly and clearly for our interpreters. All right, so before we start this event, because I think because the Indigenous Navigator is like a global partnership, and we rarely get together in one place. So I just want to do a simple chant from our place. So it goes like this. Uuay, adibay, hoo, hoo. So I want you guys to also shout hoo, hoo after I repeat the words, okay?
Okay.
So, uuay, adibay,
Woo! Woo!
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. So, this side event on the Indigenous Navigator aims to answer the following questions. So, what is the Indigenous Navigator and how is it being used by communities in monitoring changes in their territories? What are the processes and experiences at the community level in generating and using data that are relevant for positive change and development? What data is being generated on traditional knowledge? And what are the opportunities and recommendations to further support coordination and collaboration between local and national initiatives on monitoring, particularly on biodiversity and traditional knowledge? So before we start, we're just gonna show a little bit of what the Indigenous Navigator is. Thanks, David. So these are some pictures from communities who are involved in the Indigenous Navigator project from all around the world. Next slide, please. So the vision of this global project and partnership is to provide accessible data by and with Indigenous peoples that will support self-determined development and grounded advocacy towards the full and effective implementation of Indigenous peoples' rights and self-determined development. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, this is all around the world, and this is just to recognize some of the organizations who have been really working on it, and this has been going on since 2014. So, there are three pillars of the Indigenous Navigator. First is the sensitization on human rights as well as data collection. But of course, more than data collection, we need to use it for advocacy and policy influence in order that we bring out change and for self-determined development that we choose. So the methodology for the Indigenous Navigator is using two comprehensive surveys at the national and community level, and it uses process, structural, and outcome indicators as well. So this is just to show where there are active projects and actions on the ground on the Indigenous Navigator. So yes, with us in this panel are Indigenous peoples organizations from Asia and Africa, but we do have from other regions as well, like Latin America and the Arctic, but unfortunately they're not able to join us today. So to start our panel on community experiences in using the Indigenous Navigator tool, I will call on our colleagues from Kenya and Tanzania. So we have Mr. Gideon Sanago from Pintos Forum in Tanzania, Mr. James Tuala from Ilepa in Kenya, and Ms. Ann Samante from Antido in Kenya to share about their experiences.
Thank you so much, Abby, and I would like to appreciate the organizers of this side event, FPP, IGIA, TETEBA, and Electoral Partners. People's Forum is a coalition of indigenous people, CSOs, more than 55 organizations across the country, addressing the issues around the rights of indigenous people, including the issues around policy, engagement, influence the policy to ensure that the rights of indigenous people are reflected at the national level. People's Forum have been part of the implementing partner on the Indigenous Navigator. And when it comes to Indigenous Navigator, we have 3 pillars. One of the first pillar was data gathering. Data gathering, and these data have been collected by the communities themselves, but also in collaboration with the government of Tanzania as well, because you cannot collect, according to our laws, you cannot collect information or any data without
the other side.
Tanzania National Bureau of Statistics. Indigenous Navigator, for those who are not familiar with, is a framework and a set of tools for and by indigenous people to systematically monitor the level of recognition and comprehension of their rights. So, indigenous on the ground, indigenous communities have to, to monitor the level of implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People on the ground, but also the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals. And in this regard, they are a very successful project under the Indigenous Navigator from the community, which addressing the SDG 6, which talks about water. So the community have been using these tools to monitor and to see to what extent the SDG have been implemented in their communities in terms of health issues, for example, education, land-related issues, climate change, and so forth. But under the island, there are the CBDs, community-based monitoring information system. This has been there even before the Indigenous Navigator. The communities have been, monitoring the issues around monitoring the information for the analysis, monitoring, and use the CBM is a process where indigenous people generate data and information for the analysis, monitoring, and use of the community. It is geared towards community organizing, community empowerment, and the realization of indigenous people sustainable self-determined development. The Indigenous Navigator, especially in Tanzania, have been implemented in six project area. In the district of Simanjiro, we have implemented the access to water, but also I think support the community to build the dining hall for the secondary school. And in Longido, we have also supported communities to access water in 2 villages. In Mbulu, the Hadzabe community, the hunter-gatherer communities are supported to build the house for the doctor, because the doctor have been traveling far away to reach out to the community. But also we have supported the Akie hunter-gatherer community to also drink water in the area. We have some very good examples of how the Indigenous Navigator have been useful to indigenous people, especially addressing the SDG 6 issue around water. If you look at the picture, there is Terat River, the village called Terat River. In 1984, this river went dry, and the community were really suffering to get water. And when the climate change project supported by IDEA support the climate change issues, we went and visited the place, and the community came up with a request to support to bring the river into life, where we have, trained the communities and bring all of them together with the local community and local authority. And this river have been managed by the local authority back then. So when we bring the community together, the traditional institutions were given mandates and power to come up with their own protocol on how to manage and bring the river into life. So they come up with their own traditional bylaws on how to bring the river into life. So when the Indigenous Navigator also came project, then we all together support the village to face along the riverbed to ensure that no people get into the riverbed, but also even the livestock just go into the river. So as you see this picture, the one above here, this is 2016. And as we speak, the picture here, you can see the water started to flow, and the community now accessing water. So this is one of the good examples that the traditional knowledge used by the indigenous people have really, helped to bring the river that went dry since 1994 back into life, and the people now are accessing water. I also wanted to share with you how the Indigenous Navigator also supported the communities in Longido to access water, and I have a video of 4 minutes to just to play.
Naizunguka sehemu hapa, kwa kweli tumepata changamoto kuhusu visima hivi kwa kutokana sasa na ukosefu wa maji, kwa sababu tuna shida ya maji hapa na wafadhili tunaweza kuletea mashine. Kwa hiyo tulitumia hiyo mashine, ikawa imetusaidia kwa kiasi kikubwa sana, lakini baada ya hapo, bahati mbaya hiyo mashine ikaja ikaharibika. Na pia hata ndugu mtangazaji, kama uliona kabisa, uliona mifugo wakikimbilia hapa, hamna maji kabisa. Na kama mwenyekiti alipoeleza, anasema kwamba tulichanganya mpaka uende upate maji, na ndivyo ilivyo. Lakini ukikatisha kwenye hii pori, kuna bwawa fulani ambao liko na maji hapo, ambao tumechimba na trekta. Kweli mvua iliponyesha, kweli iliingiza maji kidogo, mpaka sasa hivi tunapoongea hapo, kweli hiyo maji inaishia leo. Yaani mifugo ambayo itaenda mchana ni kwamba hapati kabisa.
Ni mbaya sana, ni ngumu sana kupata maji. Karibia mlimani, napanda nafunga. Ugumani ni mbaya sana kwa maana ni mbali, alafu utaweza ikaenda ukachota ndoo 2 maji na katika. Kesho unarudia tena huko. Utaweza ukaenda saa 2 utakuja saa 9, au sio ambao umepata utaweza ukaja saa 8. Watoto wataweza wakakaa bila wajaenda kusoma kwa maana tumekosa maji ya kufulia nguo. Watoto wanateseka sana kwa njia hiyo ya maji. Tunahitaji vitu vingine, lakini maji ndio ya kwanza kwa maana ni ndio shida sana.
mengi ambayo Mungu alitufanyia. Shirika la Pingos wakaja wakatusaidia hii mashine. Kwa kweli kwa sababu tulikuwa na changamoto mkubwa sana. Hali ya maji ilikuwa ni ngumu. Kwa sababu mifugo kama haya unayoona hapa wanatoka kuanzia hapa wanaenda kilomita 15 kwenda kupata maji. Kwa baada ya shirika la Pingos kuja kuleta hii mashine hapa, kwa kweli tunawashukuru sana kwa sababu wametusaidia kwa asilimia kubwa sana. Mpaka sasa hivi mabomba ambayo inatuzunguka hapa ni kama kilomita 1. Kwa hiyo sasa nafikiri hata tuliotoka kwenye kilomita 15 mpaka tukaja kilomita 1, ndio sasa hivi unaona kabisa tuna relax, sasa hivi tunapata maji kwa sehemu rahisi sana. Kwa sana sina mengi ya kuongea, naweza tu nikasema kwamba tunawashukuru shirika la Pingos ambao walikuja kabisa wakaguswa, wakaja wakatusaidia, wakatuletea mashine. Ndio maana kabisa unaona makundi ng'ombe zaidi ya 500 kweli walishamaliza kunywa maji hapa, na mbuzi naweza tu nikasema karibia 2000 walishamaliza kunywa maji kwa ajili ya mashine ambayo shirika la Pingos walitusaidia. Mpaka sasa shida kama yale ikaanza kuondoka. Kwa hiyo mimi kama mwenyekiti wa vitongoji kweli nawashukuru sana. Sasa nikasema kwamba hatuwezi tukawalipa, lakini Mungu mwenyewe atawalipa.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see the picture, though they are speaking Swahili, but this is type of the IM project that we have touched the life of the communities, and this is really triggered to other positive things. For example, people from the advocacy organizations and the government, we are defending the right of the people from the violation of the right of indigenous people in the country. And the government of Tanzania have been saying, this is a lazy organizations, we are provoking the government because we are defending the right of the people. Now they are saying, show us what are really, evidence of the project that we are doing on the ground. So this type of the projects, such as the water projects, buildings, the doctor houses, building the school, and all that, also gave us the government confidence that there are some projects that we are doing on the ground. So apart from the advocacy, we are also touching the life of the people. But this is just to show that Indigenous Navigator have touched the life of the people, apart from participating on monitoring their rights to self-determined development, but also there are other projects, self-delivery that we have been able to support the community. So that is my sharing from Tanzania.
Thank you so much, Gideon, and thank you the planners and the organizers of this meeting, and thank you for the participants, those physically and virtually. My name is James Twala, and I work for LEPA, one of the NATO partners, also implementing Indigenous Navigator project. ILEPA was privileged actually to have been in the implementation of the project from the onset. And I was also privileged because the organization was also among those who are implementing the project. And basically, as what Gideon has indicated, is that the Indigenous Navigator is one of the things that makes the Indigenous Navigator data collection research different from other research. Is that the Indigenous Navigator is data by the Indigenous people for Indigenous people themselves. Like for example, the Maasai, so the Indigenous people across the world, a lot of research has been done. When people do the research, go. But the interesting thing about the Indigenous Navigator is that it is the Indigenous themselves conducting the data, analyzing the data, and actually storing the data within the community. So I think that's one of the many advantages and the different perspectives that the Indigenous Navigator brings and actually changes the entire landscape of research and data collection. I remember one of the elders in one of the gay community that were conducting the research of data actually asked during the inception that we are tired of people coming to take our data and they leave. We only see you when you're collecting data, and I think they eventually see that actually the data collected has not leave them. And in the interest of time, yes, in Kenya, the project was implemented by ILEPA and PIDO, and ILEPA was implementing in Narok County, and PIDO was implementing in Kajiado and Nakuru County. And just to point a few things, and I think Gideon has indicated, is that actually the Indigenous Navigator and also the CBDs did not come to trigger community monitoring. But actually, communities were doing their own monitoring in their own way. But what actually the Indigenous Navigator has come to do is actually to provide the tools. Remember, the divination and the rationale for the Indigenous Navigator is a set of tools. So what it has come to do is actually to provide tools to analyze, to organize, and to document some of these things that are not documented. And as Gideon has said, that the Indigenous Navigator was actually trying to look at assessing the implementation of some of these human rights instruments, like the UNDRIP Sustainable Development Goals. Another quote, and I actually have seen in one of the reports that we submitted, is an old man, I think the same old man, saying, you guys, you're talking about very good things. Where have you been? If we have these rights, where have you been? You should have informed us earlier enough. So anyway, the Indigenous Navigator provided that opportunity for people to know their rights. And Gideon mentioned examples, and I will also just try to point a few examples that ILEPA has actually done on this, and they are in the screen. And so one of the communities that ILEPA has implemented this is the community group ranch, or a community land, in that case called Majimoto Group Ranch. And in that group ranch we have done two things, actually using the Indigenous Navigator. One is actually to document land rights and claims, to try and have the community document their claims. The group ranch has actually experienced a lot of land grabs. Not land grabs outside, but land grabs within. And the Indigenous Navigator has actually provided the community an opportunity, yes, to do that serious data analysis, data collection, and that data analysis was actually presented in court as an evidence. The good news is that actually the case was won. And one of the things we learned in the court process is that actually court is a place of evidence. You have no evidence, you have no case. It doesn't matter how you explain, it doesn't matter how eloquent you are. And then the other thing also is about government. Government, the language of government is written. You have nothing written, you are not talking. And then the other thing that we have also done, or community, because the other thing actually that Gideon has mentioned is that actually the project has three pillars. One is the data collection in two levels, at the community level and at the national level. And we are trying to compare what is national or government is saying about the rights of indigenous people, comparing with what communities saying in the ground. And actually, when you look at the analysis and the comparison, completely different. Government talks that they are doing things, and community obviously knows it is things. But with data, you can show, because out of the data we are doing, we could show that the nearest hospital in those communities that we are conducting the data research is 20 kilometers, the nearest. And government cannot dispute because it's data. And then the other one was the small pilot project that was also implemented. And in that, one of the actually one of the domain was the issue of traditional knowledge, and we wanted to document. And after a very thorough documentation, research, interviews from the community elders, one of the things that came out, and this one was not actually anticipated in the project, but it came out as a result of the interview, that the elders actually recommended and let us document, let us put in writing a biocultural calendar. And out of that research, we did that, and I just want to show very briefly that biocultural calendar that we have done, and one of the things that we found, and I don't know if we can show that, is yes. So the calendar is there. So this is for presentation, but actually I think there was a slide that you can actually see the biocultural calendar that people now are using to display in their houses, and as I say, this one is just for presentation, for virtual presentation. So when you look at this, one of the things that you can see, there are two layers. We have the normal months, and then we have the traditional months, or names of months are there. Like for example, when you look at January on the red, and there's a name there, a traditional or a Maasai name. And one of the things that you can see is every month you can be able to see what normally happens. And the photos show that in that month it's always dry, and there are things that accompany. In fact, the interesting thing is the names goes together with what is happening. And this one of the things we can say is that the Indigenous Navigator at least has given, for the first time, I can say at least in Kenya, that we have a traditional Maasai biocultural calendar that is getting a lot of popularity. Finally, what this is that recently we had a Maasai cultural week, and when we took these calendars, thousands of them actually didn't take minutes when people were picking. So I think I can stop there in the interest of time, and then maybe hand it over to Anne to just also point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see that my name is Anne Samante, working for UNDRIP. UNDRIP is an Indigenous Peoples organization. We are based in Kenya. And what I was going to share, because I think we divided responsibilities now, especially now that we come from the same country with him, and also the same region, sub-region, with Gideon from Tanzania, which will look at the opportunities and recommendations. So I'm not sure if I'm going to follow this, but I've also written some small notes over here just to share very briefly. On the opportunities, the first one is that now through the Indigenous Navigators project, out of the data, I think you just talked about, for many years, we have so much to say that, see, this one is happening to Indigenous people. There are a lot of human rights violations. We are getting closer to 2030. We are not realizing, or even just about realizing the UN Sustainable Goals. But the question has always been, and that has been used against us. Where is the data? And so this project now, with the data that we have, for us it has given us a structured way of lobbying. We are using it to lobby with the government because we have the data with us. And as much as there are challenges that come with it, because like in Kenya, one of the challenges is that the data has to be certified by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. But that doesn't stop us from saying, it doesn't disqualify our data at all. And so it has helped us in lobbying for a lot of these human rights violations that came out clearly during the data collection or during the implementation of the project. It has also another opportunity is that it has opened up space of dialogue between Indigenous peoples and governments. And we use this space to build capacity of both, the other day I said capacity is two-way. for the longest time, we believed that Indigenous people need capacity, to put for some of these issues, or at least in project management at times. But we have also realized that there is a lot of capacity gaps with the government. And most of the time, it is out of this kind of, this gap that we end up being victims, because, they don't know and they don't put effort in trying to know. And so this data that we got from, we collected and the analyzed one is used, we use it to lobby, to have space for dialogue. A good example is in Kenya. We have a new climate change amendment bill, 2023. It's now an act. Actually, it was assented slightly before the African Climate Summit, that is in early September. And if it was not for this kind of dialogue, the FP could not have been captured in that particular bill. Act now. If it was not for this kind of dialogue, we would not have lobbied. Of course, the beneficiary is still not good. It is at 25%. But I believe that were it not for this kind of dialogue, we would have missed out completely. And so this is one opportunity that needs actually to be, we need to build on this. Because for the longest time, it has looked like we cannot work with government. But, through this kind of engagement, we were able to have this a space for dialogue. And even at the county level, he's talked about us, we were handling two particular counties, Nakuru County and Kajiado County. And I can tell you for sure through this implementation of this project, we have come up with a memorandum of understanding with county governments. It's for Kajiado with the Ministry of Lands, because our core area is for Pido is land, it is our main area of focus, and of course climate change. And for Nakuru County, which we did a clinic as one of the interventions under this project, we have a memorandum of understanding with the county government of Nakuru. And to me, this is the first step, because the moment you start having those kind of dialogue, at least you are on the negotiation table, and that one has proved to work. And so they need also to, of course, improve more or work more on this. The other one is that the violation of human rights has now been brought to the limelight, because now we know, now they know, now the world we can show the world, we have evidence to show to the world that, see, this is what has been happening. And it is very unfortunate that as much, of course, it is now out there and it has drawn a lot of public limelight, they're still happening. And at least, once something is out there, it attracts attention of so many players. And I think this is a great opportunity. It's unfortunate that right now as we speak, there are lots of evictions from the Mau forest, the Indigenous community. Today we had to cancel a meeting with one national project called FLOCA, that is one of the major financing locally led climate actions in Kenya, one major project that has been invested a lot of money. And we are mobilizing, we are coordinating the Indigenous peoples in the national space. But we couldn't go on because there are evictions happening at our doorsteps with our brothers. But this is an opportunity. It was an opportunity for us to express and show the world what has been happening. And that most of the time was not documented. It was not there. And so it was just like, so where is it? How do we know? The other one is under the self-determination development. One of the biggest components that for me worked wonders in this project is the self-determination development. And the other component, as my colleagues have said, one component on supporting projects, small project at the community level. But this was a game-changing way of doing things. Because as I said, we keep collecting, not us, but people keep collecting data. But what next? Yes, the data is there, but what next? This is one project that gave Indigenous people a priority to one, identify the needs and say, see, these are our needs. Two, prioritize the needs. Yes, we have 1, 2, 3. We do not have a school, we do not have a health center, but for us, health center is number one. which is a good model, because that is what we keep saying out here, that involve indigenous peoples in this project development. And so this was one project that can be replicated in the world. Yeah, sorry, and so this one gave one example is we had a project I said earlier, a health center of an indigenous community that has never had a health center in their area because they live next to a national park. And going to the nearest clinic, you'll have to cross the national park. And it gets to 6, and you are not allowed because you are termed as a poacher. And then labor strikes for a mother. Labor strikes at 7 a.m. Guess what will happen? But so this one gave them an opportunity to tell us, no, it's not. We need yes, this and this, but we prioritize this. So that was another biggest opportunity that was there. And for recommendations, just to wind up, as I've already talked about, there's need for replication. This one happened, for example, in Africa in 4 countries, I believe. Kenya, Tanzania, two projects in Kenya, then there was one in Tanzania, and then we had one in Cameroon. I think for me, having seen the fruits of this project needs to be replicated to all indigenous peoples, country where indigenous peoples are. And then there's need for learning and exchange. This is a project that is happening in Kenya, in Africa, in other regions. We need to learn what worked in Africa, what didn't work, what can we do better? Because right now in the second phase of implementation, that is being supported by the EU, we are in the second phase of implementation. We need to learn what worked in this first phase, what didn't work, because we can only learn from that. Then we also need to, another recommendation, invest more on partnership. I think this project have made us to understand that partnerships work wonders. Sometimes we are pulling from different directions, but when we sit down, even with governments, you tend to gain by that kind of, and so we need to invest more on partnership. And then, of course, again, we need to document the policy gaps. Yes, there are these gaps that have been noted. We need to do serious documentation around that, around those gaps, and also to monitor, to see, okay, 3 years, this is how the situation was, and how is it 4 years later and 5? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So from Africa, we jumped a few time zones later to Asia. So with us, we have Ms. Mi Her, who is with Impact in Thailand, and Mr. Gordon Thomas, working with Pacos Trust in Malaysia. So Kiwi and Papa Gordon. Who wants to go first?
Good evening, my name is Mi Vitaya Yakana. I'm belonging to the Hmong indigenous group from the northern of Thailand. And actually, we are all indigenous people from around the world. We are facing quite challenging, and we have to fight a lot of things. In Thailand, we could say that more than 100 years we fight a lot of issues that we had in Thailand, and even we spent very long time to fighting about our different kind of challenges. But it seems that there are more challenges coming more and more, so we cannot stop. So today I just would like to present about one of the cases in that we have been used this framework to collect information in the country level. So I would say that in Thailand or in the other country also, right, that we are, mostly of us, we are losing about our knowledge, our culture, and especially our language. So most of the young people, they are not able to speak their own language to their grandparents. Also, like myself, I was part of, I was like took away from my community since I was 9 years old for education. And I never had chance to learn about my own community, my own, the mountain in my community, the river in my community. I never learned about that thing, but I learned something. They're very far from my community, like learn something from Bangkok. I was to speak Thai. I'm not allowed to speak my own language. So that's why when I'm 15 years old, I come back to stay in my community again. I cannot communicate to my my to my parents. So this is very sad story that many of the young people are facing this kind of issue. So this committee also they struggle of the same issue, and they're fighting for more than 30 years ago. That at that time there is no school in the community, and because they are living in very far in remote area, and in order to get to the education, most of the students have to go to other place to living in the boarding school for a year like that. So the elder they don't want to the student to be away from their community. So that's why they try to set up their own community learning school there, and they try to set up their own curriculum, and actually they have a lot. Luckily, they have many of the knowledgeable person in the community, and they get a lot of support from the parents also, because their parents also don't want their children to be far away from them either. Even the small children like 6 years old, they have to go to the other to study in the town already. So this very sad for the parents. Like so, 30 years ago, that the community they try to how to say to run this community learning there, and okay. So in this school, we can say that it is the community lead education, indigenous lead education, and they use the mother tongue as the channel, the tool to for teaching and learning in the community. And this community called Mowaki, it is a current community, and they are located in the northern of Thailand. Actually, it's not really far from the town, but spend quite long time to travel because the roads are not good. There's no electricity, no water supply, no health care center there. Yeah, so I think it's similar with the others also. And the population is around 400 people there. So this community is still practicing their own livelihood, like they're still practicing the traditional occupation. The current people, they practice the rotational farming. So they still practice there, having the paddy field and also gathering, hunting, and yeah, they have their own forest there. But now we're declared to be the national park and surrounded by the Royal Project there. And another program again will come to declare. So many projects around the community. So they are very challenging for the community. And so yeah, these are actually this. Because of the elder, they are very strong, and through the capacity building and through the strengthening of the community movement or community organization in the community, so they are able to try to advocate about the issue to the public, and they are able to announce the community to be the special cultural zone under the covenantal solution on the current livelihood revival. Already 10 years ago that have been announced as already there. Okay. Okay. So the initiative of the committee is that I have mentioned already that because of the elders, they have a lot of concerns that they don't want the student to go outside. So that's why 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, that they are having this idea to set up the community learning school, and they are most of the students, not only the students in the community, but from the other community nearby there, like 4 or 5 community, because mostly of the current people, they are living in very far away, and they live in the small cluster, not as the community, but as cluster. So the other 5 clusters also come together, and the students they come to study here. They have the member in the community, they play the role to be the committees there, and they also have the knowledgeable person that play very good role to teach the student in the school. And for the graduate student from here, they are very get how to say be adult. They come back to be the teacher in this community learning school also. And just this year that they have the student is 60 students now, and the curriculum that they are they also they use their own curriculum that produced by themselves, and they also support their food. The parents try to support the food for the student, support the learning material, and also try to support the compensation for the teacher also. And in this time, because of the internet, also very necessary. So I did try to how to say, gathering the money from the people from the community to pay for the internet for access to the many information from outside for the student also. So you can see that this is the initiative from the community. They have done very well in the community already, and we have been discussed and sharing about this initiative in different level of the policy makers. But actually, when we talk with the policy makers, it seems that they are not. They always think that our system are not aligned with the mainstream education, because they just are thinking that if you the education you have to pass the exam like the mainstream, you have to get this high score from the science or the math like that. But this is the community. They also the mainstream education also not aligned with their livelihood, because the students, if they go to outside, they're not able to come back and stay in the community also. So that's why they finally, when we going to talk to the policy maker, they said it is very contradictory to the mainstream education, and they think that our curriculum are very backward and not when they graduate they're not able to get good job and they are not speak clearly Thai, so it's not something that the government need, because the government just need would like to have like every people become Thai people, speak not speak speak Thai language, speak the Bangkok language. I would say that because we have many dialects, but every people forced to speak Bangkok Thai language like that. So this is happening in Thailand. Yeah. So I will share with you that this is some of the picture that the knowledgeable person play a very important role to transmission the knowledge. So you can go to the next. Yeah. You see in the night time, the children will go to the knowledgeable person to listen to the storytelling of the elders. They plan because they are not provided food from the government, so they have to do their own gardening. Yeah. So this is where they learn from the teacher, and also outdoor learning. And yeah, this is the curriculum they are teaching in the school is based on the calendar of the community, because they also like when they are planting the rice harvesting season, or when they do some ceremony or ritual in the community, this kind of thing become the curriculum they're teaching for the students. So they bring the student to learn and connecting with the community activities in the community, and they learn how. You see, this is some of the curriculum they learn from the community. Students they get the food from the garden, from the rotational farming, I would say, because the normally garden they don't have like this. But from the rotational farming, they can gathering a lot of food, and students they can learn from this kind of thing, you see. And they know how to cooking, because every day the student have to cook by themselves. Yeah. And you see this picture, the students they are able to go to the forest to collect information about the biodiversity of in the forest. For example, the insect, butterfly, or like diverse of butterfly or insect or plant, herb, like that. So this kind of thing that students they learn a lot from the surrounding of the village, like that. Yeah. Okay. So actually, like Bangkok is quite far from our area, so it's very difficult to bring the people from parliament to the community to see what happened in the community. So that's why I really believe that this kind of framework, the indicator, will be very good for us to bring the information, put in their hand, and they will see what happened in the community level. And actually, we could see that there are also some opportunities like the UNDRIP, the SDG goal number 4, goal 4, right? Education must free for all. But actually, it's not mentioned, no educator mentioned about the indigenous there. And at the Thai constitution also saying that ensure that every student, every child receive quality education with free of charge. And but you see the 60 of students here, they don't get anything, even one of other food. And the other opportunity is that they have the cabinet resolution on the revitalization of current livelihood. It's already 10 years there. And this kind of can be one of the instruments that the current people and this committee try to fight for their rights. And the other thing is they have the National Education Act. This also states that the private family, community organizations, enterprise shall have the right to provide basic education, and government also have to support them. But what happened? What happened there is the state are still not provide any support to this community learning school. And if you see that community organization, now there are many community that try to have setting up of the learning center because the mainstream education not aligned to the livelihood. So there are why many communities they try to set up their own learning center, but they haven't received any support. Why? Enterprise organization that they have setting up of their school. This enterprise they receive funding from the government. So they are very rich people. However, they receive the funding from the government. Yeah, and we try to raise our issue a lot, but still not be heard by the parliament people. And like I mentioned, the SDG goal 4 also not identify anything about the educator, not identify anything about the education, indigenous education. And like another challenge, if they would like to get a higher education, because the communities could just have only up to grade 6, and if they would like to get a higher education, they have to be away from the community again. So this is the worry of the parents and the community. And the very big challenge for indigenous people is, I think most of in Asia, no recognition of indigenous people in Thailand. We're not allowed to speak self-determination. Indigenous people in our country. So this is very, very challenging for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, me. I'm not going to stand up because I'm not the kind of person who will sit down, because I will sit I will sleep. So anyway, my name is Gordon John Thomas, very English name, and I'm an indigenous people of Dusun Tatana. I'm a coastal community in Sabah. So I will talk, I will share a little bit about our practices, basically the whole indigenous people in Sabah. And I guess Indigenous Navigator will be, new partners, maybe, hopefully, because we are very new. We don't have any initiative with, not initiative, we haven't joined with the Indigenous Navigator at the moment, but we hope so. We hope in the future. Yeah. So I'm going to share a little bit about Sabah. So this next slide, please. So this is Sabah. Sabah consists of two regions. Three. Peninsula Sarawak and Sabah. Sabah is on the tip and the top of Borneo. So basically we are majority of IPs. We have 60% the population in Sabah is IPs. And basically three main groups, the Dusun, Mulut, and the Sungai, the Titanics. Yeah. Next. Next, please. Okay, yeah. So this is what our worldview look like. Yeah, so we have forests, we have agriculture, settlement, and also river. Not only about the river, but also our seascape. Yeah, our seascape for our brother and sister from the seascape. So usually the government will always think about the settlement is the territory. It's not like that. It's not only about the settlement area. It's the houses, a small piece of land, the football field, the church, the mosque. It's not that. It's not about that. But the government always think that's what IP's territory is. But actually, it's huge. It's very holistic, and everything is really interconnected. Okay, next. And this is our practices. We have tons of practices. Yeah, this is some of it, but it's very profound. It's very really interconnected with the culture, the do and don'ts, the adat, what we call it, the customary law. We also respect the living and the non-living. It's very important. We have these conservation practices: use and protect. Kumpi Gunung, we use and protect. And I really love this, our FPIC process. It's not only talking about our communities, not only ask for consent with the community, but also the spirits. That's why we are really respect the non-living. Yeah? And the monitoring system. This is indicated by the nature, like the birds. Whenever the birds call, they will know that it will be a fruit season. If the kind of birds is having in their field, rice paddy field, they will know that our paddy field, our rice yield will be increased. So this is like very rich. And there's also one I also want to emphasize is the sanction. We have this to equilibrium, or we need to balance everything. So if there is a wrongdoing, the situation will hit up not only the communities but also the spirit around it. And this is where we have this subject how to cool down, to make it balance. And the sanction is not about money, it's not about big value of things. Even though it's like one pinch of salt, it's already soaked, it's cooled down. But the most important is the stand of the community. The stand of the community. Okay? So next, please. So I will just gonna scrolling around. This is how Sabah looks like. So this is our Mount Kinabalu. We call it the Akinabalu. So this is where not only the dusun around it respect that area, but also the whole indigenous people in Sabah. But what we can see here, they know how to use the land use. So there's like paddy field, then there will be like the young forest and the very pristine forest. And to go in there, there's rules. You can't just enter the forest like just in. You have rules of using the Borospuru, which is the forest language. So the community in this area, they will use the forest language. Come in, to go in, to enter to the forest, to gather the non-timber forest product and other things. Okay, next. This is our mom. This is our indigenous Commonwealth woman. She's in the northern part of Sabah, especially in the mangrove area. So they're very dependent on the mangrove. It's not only about the second area, but also they know how to gather all the proteins, especially the shells. And they know when is the time to get the shells. They know when is the monsoon season. They know when is the drought season, and it's very rich. They know everything. Yeah. Next. And this is the Sungai Rumana indigenous people. They are very dependent on the forest. They are hunters, but also the most significant. I should put the tree there. Actually, they are also honey gatherers. They know how to use. They know how to climb the tree without any safety here. Sorry. Okay. Oh, too fast up. Okay. So okay, yeah. This is like this is Romana, yeah. Yeah, I know. Sorry, there's a lot of picture. I don't know how to include everything in one package. Okay, next. Yep. So and also this is also one of the murut. The murut also very depend on the forest, and this is one of their customary practices where how they monitor the forest. So this is indicate there's no-go zone. So there will be like they put the sign there saying that okay, this is a no-go zone. Yeah. Okay. Next, and this is the how to say the rotational farming. Yeah, rotational farming. But we believe that it's not about when we rotate it, we believe that it will rest the soil, and it took like 1 to 5 years to be as a fallow, 5 to 10 years to be a young forest, and 10 to 20 years as the pristine forest. So they already counted. They already know how many years. Then they can go back to that area. Okay, next. And this is the most famous in Sabah. If you go to Sabah, they will talk about Tagal system. I think in the LBO also talking about Tagal system. Yeah, and this is the Tagal system, and it's been adopted in 2003 by the state. Although when it's been adopted, the aspiration is still there, but a little bit diluted because of bureaucracy. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the challenge. There's a lot of challenge, yeah. One of the challenge is customary land. Yeah, customary land, customary territory always been, they always prioritize on development. Not only, if you can see the first slide, the first picture is talking about no hunger, poverty eradication. But in the end, all the forest has gone. The second one is clean water, clean energy. The dams is there. So the dam, yeah. And also, yeah, conservation. They're talking about conservation, but evicted. All the IPs were evicted from the area, although they have been there since the beginning of time. Yeah, and you can see here. This is what I talking about the Tagal system. Once it's there, the Tagal system, they cannot. The jurisdiction has gone. Used to be the Tagal system will taking care all the watershed. They will taking care of the ecosystem. But once it's been adopted by the state, the jurisdiction is only the fish. It's not about the pollution. So it's been like there's no point. Yeah? They're only talking about protect the fish, but the river polluted, they don't even care about it. Yeah? So that's what some of the challenges happening now. Okay, next. Okay, so this is our strategy. Actually, Pakos, we are CBOs. We've been since 1986, but this is the 3 main goals, strategies. Yeah, we want to strengthening the community through documentation, community organizing, building network with others, partners, not only communities, not only locally, but also with the government, and also national and international, like today. And need to get some air here. Okay, and third one is advocacy. It's very important. Advocacy, lobbying is very important. Okay, so I think we're going to be the last slide. Oh, yeah. So this is what the community has done. Community protocols, they have done their moon cycles. Yeah, next. They did like mapping and also monitoring inventory. Yeah, so there's a lot they have done. A lot. Okay, next slide. But, and also they have, when talking about languages, when we talk about conservation, they can't even think about it. They can't even imagine what is conservation. You try to explain like, oh, you have to conserve this, you have to conserve that. But when you talk about like, oh, do you have this kind of practice? When you take care of your environment, you take care of your tree, you take care. Then they said, oh, we have. So they have, but they're using their own language. So like Ingaradan, that's the Sungai Romana. and so on. So you can read. So they have their own conservation terms, which is very important, and we need to include that instead only ICCAs, only protected area, only OECMs. So we need that. Next. Yeah, this is like the network. Next. And then also the lobbying, advocacy. Next. So, okay, yeah. So how Indigenous Navigator can support? Just to wrap up. I don't know, because I haven't done it. I mean, they haven't done it. So I don't know. I was so awed and amazed with all of them telling stories. So I think like, well, I just like jot it down. So maybe something like, capacity building is very important for the IPs. We have a lot of data, but to consolidate is not an easy task. It's very hard. It's scattered everywhere. It's hard. Monitoring and advocacy, yes, this is like, when I read the Indigenous Navigator, it's about SDGs, it's about UNDRIP, and it's about blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of framework, but yes, I think it's very important to know that, and also to include our way of monitoring, CBMMS, yeah? Yeah, yes, mutual learning, I think is very important, not only learning each other, or not only top-down way of learning, but we share each other. Sharing is like communities. It's very important. Okay, I think that's all from me. I think so. Yeah. Next, please, next. Yeah. So I like this picture. When people only talking about in the desk, when they're talking about, oh, we take care of the elephant. Then the other one say, no, we take care of the plant. And the other one, no, we take care of this. But for us, for IPs, we take everyone. We're taking care of everything, holistically and profoundly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so I know we are quite delayed. So I think we have to move the Q&A a bit later. So for those who have, I think it's really important to hear also some of to know why we are doing this here at the CBD right now, because you want to connect it really to what is happening on the discussions in the contact group, and also to show what data is being generated. So I think we have to start with these presentations now, and then for those who can still stay, then we have the room to have Q&A. But first I would like to give to David, who is a consultant with IPIA, one of the steering committee members, and he does the portal management. So David, could you share with us what we have right now?
Thank you so much, Abby, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here with all of you, and I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to. In just a moment, we'll share our slides, but I'd just like to take this time to reflect on what a privilege it is to be a part of this panel and to join all of you, our partners, who are doing amazing work and who have brought forward your experiences and your relationships to the land and shared it with all of us. It's really moving and powerful, and I hope that my presentation can share a little bit more from the global level of some of the aggregate data that we have within the Navigator. We have a little hiccup about sharing the presentation. Yes, I think that'd be best, but I can't know there's something we can share. Yeah. Okay, here we go. The technical part is always the most exciting. All right, so I think that we've heard from the panel that the full respect and implementation of Indigenous peoples' rights is crucial. It's core to understanding and protecting biodiversity and ensuring the transmission of cultural heritage. It's vital when we talk about sustainable development and we talk about resilience of ecosystems. Understanding the role of Indigenous peoples in relationships to their lands and their territories is absolutely critical. And it's integral in shaping conservation strategies. And this fits so well with that image that you just had of managers thinking of one group being in this fence and this part fenced over here. But when we talk about conservation, we need to talk about a holistic view that recognizes the role and knowledge of Indigenous peoples. The Indigenous Navigator is a quite comprehensive framework. It's built to monitor the implementation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So there's over 150 indicators, and those indicators are broken up into 12 domains. But when we talk about the CBD, those indicators linked to Article 8J and to Article 10 are the core indicators that we monitor and are linked to the TK indicators within the CBD. And the Navigator is unique, as we've heard also from the panel, because it's Indigenous-led data generation. And it's a methodology that's based on data by Indigenous peoples for Indigenous peoples. So while as GIA, as a support organization, hosts the portal, we act as custodians to hold that data and to ensure that the ownership and the control of that data remains with the communities. And I'd just like to take a note to say that we'll also have integration of new indicators in line with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework in an additional module on biodiversity. So we're growing and expanding. It's an evolving initiative by Indigenous peoples. All right, so what are we monitoring? When I talk about some of the data to come, we have 63 questions out of 138 in the community survey and 117 in the national survey that focus or are linked directly to the CBD process. Article 8J and Article 10 are directly linked to 15 of those indicators, and they're broken into 18 questions, 6 at the national level and 12 at the community level. But there are 45 additional indicators within the Navigator framework that broadly link to the CBD, and those include cultural integrity, education, employment and occupation, so that's traditional occupations, freedom of expression, fundamental rights and freedoms, lands, territories, and resources, and participation in public life, and critically, self-determination, which is at the heart of all of this work. And just a note about what data is available, because this is always the big asterisk anytime you start talking about data or you start pulling out aggregate data from our portal, is that we have 175 community surveys published that cover about 320,000 Indigenous persons, or people. In Africa, we have 46 published surveys, 36 from Cameroon, 5 from Kenya, and 5 from Tanzania, although the scope of what's considered a community is different in each case. So in Kenya and Tanzania, as we've heard from James and from Gideon and from Anne, they're quite large communities within those surveys. Within Asia, we have 79 published surveys, and in the Americas, we have 51. For the sake of time, maybe I shouldn't read it all out. And then at the national level, we have 18 published surveys. In Africa, we have 5 published surveys from 5 different countries: South Africa, Cameroon, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. In Asia, we have Nepal, Philippines, Bangladesh, and Japan. We also have Cambodia, but that data has not been made public. And that's again going back to that, understanding and recognition of the ownership of this data by the communities and the peoples that are completing it. Then in the Americas, we have 6 that are published. This is Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Suriname, Argentina, and Brazil. And then in the Arctic, we have completed a survey for Sapmi. And of course, that has to be broken up by the UN member states, so that's Sweden, Norway, and Finland. And we had plans to also work with the Sapmi in Russia, but unfortunately, as we know, the crisis there has made it impossible to work. I think I'll skip this because we're quite out of time. These are just some general reflections on land rights and use, particularly around conflict. We'll talk about the specifics of some of this data in a chart in just a second. And on cultural heritage and language, this is data on incidents of misappropriation of cultural heritage, restrictions on access to cultural sites, and it emphasizes an ongoing rights violation. And also the recognition and use of Indigenous language in official capacities is quite limited, and this is reported also in the data, which highlights the difficulty in transmitting that traditional knowledge, but also that longevity of that culture as it's passed to the next generation. Education and traditional occupations. Data on the extent of education conducted in Indigenous language and the practice of traditional occupation reveals major gaps and challenges, particularly in access to education. We'll see some of this represented in the data. And participation in public life. This is representation in everything from TV and movies and radio to actual participation in democratic processes of being represented in municipal, national government. I'd also encourage you to please jump into our Data Explorer and explore the data yourself. I'm going to pull out some aggregate, and that's always limited use. But you can jump in, and you have regional buckets there for Africa, for the Arctic, for Asia that you can click into, you can explore, and you can see each of the countries' submissions and their responses. and their comments, and that's most critical. Within the survey, there's also some guidance that's provided, and this provides a foundation and a way for us to be clear about our methodology, but it also provides that rights sensitization that we've heard some of the panelists speak about. As we heard from James, that reflection that why are we only hearing that these are our rights now? Where have you been? Why haven't you told us that we have these rights? A lot of that comes from this guidance and the facilitation of the data collection process. Okay. So let's jump right into a little bit of the data. So for those communities that experience conflicts related to land or natural resources, they're asked to identify the related sectors that are driving those types of attacks. And so we have a number of categories: extractive industries, infrastructure, large-scale commercial agriculture, energy-related projects, settlers, establishment of parks or protected areas, illegal logging or other illegal activities, disputes within or among indigenous communities themselves, or other not captured by the survey. And what we can see through this bar chart, those categories are the categories underneath the bars. I read them because this is quite small on the screen. But we can see that across the board, we see the highest number of incidents, over 50% of the respondents, noting that they have experienced attacks from settlers or incursions into their land. And just the role and importance of land and land integrity really shines out very broadly. But then we also have the establishment of parks and protected areas, illegal logging or other illegal activities, and large-scale commercial agriculture as major drivers of conflicts around land and natural resources of indigenous peoples. Then we have conflicts related to lands and territories, and I've broken this out into 3 regional breakdowns: for Africa, for the Americas, and Asia. And the reason that we wanted to break this out is because when we look at Africa, for example, look at the establishment of parks or protected areas and illegal logging or other illegal activities. 37% and 57% of the surveys reporting conflicts on those 2 sectors specifically. And when we look at the Americas, establishment of parks or protected areas is only 6% of the drivers of conflict. And so this is really interesting for us to see that regional disparity, but also where we see an exploration or a drive for conservation in the establishment of parks within indigenous people's rights, where the rights infrastructure and the policy infrastructure isn't as strong, we see higher numbers of conflicts in trying to defend those spaces. We also have then, have there since 2008, which is 1 year after the adoption of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, been incidents of settlements, land grabbing, land use, or resource extraction without free, prior, and informed consent. All respondents have said yes. So in every single case, in every survey, they have responded that they have experienced incidences of settlements and land grabbing, land use, and resource extraction on their lands without their consent. Then, if your people or community since 2008 has experienced violations of their rights, has there been access to remedy, or have the perpetrators been sanctioned by the national judicial system? And in this case, only 30% have had some sort of remedy. And over 70% then have shown that they have no access to justice. There's no remedy for these violations within the national legal system. When we talk about characteristics of traditional land and resource tenure, this is also quite interesting for us in the discussions that are here during this working group. But what are the characteristics of your traditional land and resource tenure system? And they can tick multiple boxes, which is why these numbers don't add up to 100%. But you can see that in most cases, it's community land, communally held land. So lands and resources are held and managed collectively by the community, 41%. Land and resources are held and managed by families, clans, or other groups within the community, 43%, and then 37% for individual title or land. But we still see a major gap in any form of titling where the lands are actually being recognized or where there's legal recognition. And then whether or not the states have adopted clear procedures for identification, demarcation, mapping, and registration of indigenous peoples' lands or territories in consultation with and in accordance with indigenous norms, values, and customs. We actually have a global response here that's quite high, almost 80%, that some type of clear procedures exist. Whether or not they're implemented is another question. And then we talked a little bit about language, and we heard from me about this very moving and powerful story about how difficult it is to be pulled away from your community and be instructed in a foreign language and then have to try and come home. and thank you for sharing that. So we have questions in the Navigator about how many Indigenous children and youth read and write. We also have questions about transmission of language and instruction in language. But I thought to pull this out because you can see that across all of our respondents, this is the global aggregate, the none category, so no children in either primary school, end of primary school, end of secondary school, speak their language is between 3 and 3/4, basically, 75%. And the only one survey gave us 5 out of 5, and that was because it's in a wholly self-managed community where they run their own schools. And then to what extent is primary education taught in your Indigenous mother tongue? This is another one of those difficult questions where we see over half of the global respondents saying that it's not taught at all in their mother tongue. There's no education. Particularly, this is an issue in Asia, where we have 85% saying not at all, where in Africa and the Americas, we see that either there's a lack of data, particularly in the African case, or that there's, to some extent, some education in mother tongue. The right is being implemented and instruction is provided. And then, I think I'm almost out of time, huh? So I'll try and wrap up, I'm sorry. I probably read a bit too much, but that's why I said explore the data yourself. It's public, you can go on, and the leaflet will take you to our website. But the misappropriation of cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions, globally 72% have reported that there has been misappropriation. In Africa, we see 40% saying yes, Asia 75%, the Americas 83%, and for the Sapmi area and the Sami, 100% have answered yes. Restrictions in their free and privileged access to the religious and cultural sites, 51%. And then continuation of the 3 most important cultural, spiritual, and religious traditions, customs, or ceremonies, and how is that considered, whether it be safe, vulnerable, definitely endangered, severely endangered, or critically endangered. And only 37%, so less than a third in all cases, saying that they are continuation of those are safe. I'll end probably here for time. Just to say, on traditional occupations, we also collect data. The occupations are named individually by survey, so I can't give you those occupations, but if you go into the ILO's report, which is guidance for collecting statistics on traditional occupations, it was released in August. They've taken our data and they've used that data in a number of the chapters of that report in guidance to national statistics offices on traditional occupations, and they explicitly go out and disaggregate the different occupations that are listed. So you can find that data there. You can also find it in our Explorer. But what's really critical to see is that you have women on the left and men on the right, and in both cases, importance of these traditional occupations is diminishing. Well, the importance remains the same. These 2 middle categories are about there, but for the importance has increased, or revitalization, this is quite limited. Well, as the no importance any longer is also quite limited. So that's good to see that it hasn't been erased, but it's very challenging to see that it's diminishing in a number of cases. Okay, I'll end there, but there's some interesting things about restrictions and some other data, but I think we'll probably
Thank you, David. That was really amazing to see how much data that is already available in the portal. And now we have Georgie, Senior Policy Advisor with Forest Peoples Program, to share about how we can really link this to what you're doing here right now, and as well as the opportunities or the next steps you have in the Navigator.
Okay, I'll be very short, because when we were planning for this side event, I said let us start with the experiences, because we have to let experiences speak for themselves, right? And then of course the aggregation that's being done through our portal. And then just now, my friends were laughing at me, because they asked me to come to the stage, and I was asking, am I a speaker? Because I really felt that the direct experiences would be the most important part of this side event. I think just by showing what is being produced already shows us the linkages with the work that's happening here in the CBD. However, because I'm also part of the DMAFE, when we talked about community-based monitoring and information systems, which is run by the KOGBF, quite a lot didn't know. What are you actually doing, and what kinds of tools are you using, and what kind of data are you generating? So a big part of this side event was really to understand better what's being done and how valuable and how rich is community-based monitoring and information systems. And what is good really about the Indigenous Navigator, which I think our colleagues here have spoken about, is that it has opened that platform to directly engage with decision makers, with the governments, with statistics, with, can you imagine statistics office having to validate this type of data? I mean, this is the type of relationship that we currently have around generation of data and recognition of this data. So the fact that we're able to show exactly how robust and how these methodologies work is a very important part in advancing recognition of diverse data sources, but the value of traditional knowledge in generating this. So I wish there were more participants, but thanks for those. I'm sure you value this a lot. But because there is, of course, this contact group happening, you can expect that most governments have their minds on the contact group. So I won't skip you from asking questions if you have some, and trying to explain further, which you've already heard. So let's open the floor for those who can stay for the questions and answers or reflections.